All right, welcome to a study of the Greek language. I'm glad that you're a part of this class. This is an introduction to Greek, and I'm going to try to, each of our classes, to give a brief introduction, just indicating what we're going to cover in the class. So this one will be more general in that I'll be talking about the whole class and what we plan to cover in this session. A couple of things as far as materials are concerned are these. First of all, we will be using both those that are online, videos, as well as books. And I'd like for you to get familiar with the tools of the trade, as they call it. Books like a Greek lexicon, an interlinear English Greek New Testament, so that you can be able to follow both those languages concurrently. But also I want you to, we will have to, of necessity, study something about the language itself. But there's an interesting part of this study that has to do with the history and the culture of the Greeks. Primarily, it is centered around the time of the Greek Empire, which is the lifespan of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE. But the language itself, of course, predates that. It is, in fact, one of the oldest of the Greek languages, of the languages, I should say, and has been continuous in history and in use by people ever since that time period of hundreds and even thousands of years ago. But it was spread during the time of Alexander the Great. We remember, of course, the Greek philosophers from Athens primarily, of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and one of the students, of course, the famous student of Aristotle was Alexander, later called Alexander the Great. It was his father, though, Philip of Macedonia, Philip II, that was also a ruler in Macedonia and had a prominent part, of course, in the life of Alexander and in the promotion of the Greek language. But what we want to do is to show the importance of the Greek language for biblical students. The koine, or the common Greek of the common people, is, of course, our emphasis. There are other dialects of the Greek language, but koine is the dialect of biblical Greek of the New Testament. But going back just a bit, let's go back first of all to the Old Testament, and it being first written, of course, in the Hebrew language, and part of it, of course, as well in Aramaic, which is a dialect of the Hebrew language. But it was during the time period of after Alexander the Great had conquered the nations round about in the Middle East, in the Mediterranean basin, that Egypt came under his control. And there in Egypt, in Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, that city became famous for a library that housed hundreds of scrolls of the ancient world, and they were brought there by various scholars under the direct interest of Alexander. And it was a place of great study and learning during that time period. But Ptolemy II, a ruler of Egypt after being subdued by Alexander, authorized the translation of the Hebrew Scriptures of the Jews into the Greek language. And that shows, of course, the extent of the spread of the Greek language in that day. And that they, the people round about, embraced it for various reasons. Because of course, being conquered by Alexander, but also because of the beauty of the language, because of the utility of it, the usefulness of it, as it is to this present day. But Hebrew scholars who knew both the Hebrew and had learned the Greek translated it around 250 BC and over a period of time. And the translation that resulted was called the Septuagint because of the word 70 scholars involved. And later, the history says 72 scholars. But they translated the Old Testament scriptures into Greek. And that shows how that the Hebrew people had very widely embraced the Greek culture. In fact, many of them began to name their children by Greek names and no longer by Hebrew names. I have a copy of one volume out of a 4-volume set of the Septuagint, the Hebrew in the Greek language. And that's interesting, of course, that here in the 3rd century before Christ, that you would have the Old Testament scriptures already in the Greek. And then by the New Testament period in the 1st century, and by it being completed near the end of the 1st century, you would have the entire Bible in one language. And that in and of itself says a great deal about the usefulness of the Greek language for Bible students who are serious students of studying both the Old and the New Testaments in Greek. But of course, since the 1st century period, we have now gone to almost 2,000 years since the completion of the New Testament. And that being done, of course, 2,000 years, a lot of changes would have taken place. And people did not continuously use the Greek or speak in the Greek language, even churches throughout that 2,000-year period. In fact, in the 4th century AD now, or CE, the Common Era period, in the 4th century you have Jerome translating it into Latin. And he did so, of course, because of the Roman Empire now ruling the Mediterranean world. And so the churches began to use this translation, the official language of the Roman government, even though many people continued to speak in the Greek language during the Roman period. Rome, of course, as an empire, lasted into the 5th century AD, and therefore was a powerful influence during that time period. But the church of that period, especially in the western part of the empire, used Jerome's Latin Vulgate, or the vulgar language, or common language of the people. And it was not, as some scholars say, it was not a very good translation of the Scriptures. Yet it was used and extensively promoted for about 1,000 years under the time period of the Protestant Reformation movement. But backing up just for a moment, the Latin Church from the center of Rome had a division. A great schism occurred in that Western, we would call today, the Catholic Church. And a division occurred in 1054 AD. So in the 11th century, you have a division between the east and western parts of the Roman Empire. And the eastern part used the Greek scriptures, the Greek language from Constantinople. And the western, Rome, used the Latin until the time of the Protestant Reformation movement. But in the 15th century, in the 1400s, 1450s, you had the German scholar and inventor Gutenberg, Johannes Gutenberg, inventing a printing press, which played a prominent role in changes in that time period of the Middle Ages, and also affected religious studies. And that being done because of the proliferation, the widely dissemination of scriptures through the printing press. And of course, with the schism again in the Western Church by priests in the Roman Catholic Church, questioning things that were being done and taught in the Latin tradition. And therefore, a new era was beginning with these priests seeking to reform that Latin church, and therefore the name of the Reformation movement. They didn't want to simply start anew, but rather to reform what was going on there. And prominently involved in that was a consideration of the scriptures themselves and the language that they would be translated into. And so the Latin scriptures then gave way to, by the work of Erasmus, a scholar of that period, who promoted heavily the Greek language and the translations into English to be made from the Greek. And therefore we have the introduction now into the Western world away from the Latin translation of Scripture into Greek. That was a prominent move by Erasmus that affected Martin Luther and others who were leaders, John Calvin and the Wesleys and the other prominent leaders of the Protestant Reformation movement, and brought Greek into prominence in the Western world. And therefore we have a great deal of, we should have a great deal of appreciation for that emphasis on the Greek language that occurred during that 15th century period. And it has come down to us to this very day. And so he saw in that the weakness of the Latin translation, Jerome's Vulgate, but he also saw the value of going back to the original scriptures written in the Greek language. And that, of course, the translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, and the New Testament originally being written in the Greek language. And therefore that emphasis has come down to biblical students to this day, where depending on how far you go in your advanced studies in religion and in theology, you will be required to do a number of studies into the Greek language itself because of its value, because of its helpfulness in studying the scriptures in the original language. And so today it's a very common thing in our Western civilization, Western world, and especially here in America. We have several societies, we have printing presses, we have places of distribution of Greek materials in our own country. And therefore, this emphasis is valuable and beneficial. When you're reading an English translation, one of the first thoughts that ought to come to mind is to think about what is the underlying word that has been translated into English, and what did it mean. And therefore, we have all sorts of materials available for you today, both in software as well as in textbooks, so that you can do your own research and your own studies in the Greek language. And so I welcome you to a study in an introductory way of the Greek language. What I want to do is to introduce the tools by which you will be doing that research. And we will, of necessity, of course, be learning the alphabet, learning how to transliterate a word from Greek into English, and to begin thinking seriously about what those words meant, underlying our English words. What did it mean to a Greek student? And how and what was intended by the authors of the Greek books of both the New Testament and the Old Testaments. So I welcome you to a beginning study of this vast study of the Greek language. It will be very beneficial to you as you continue your studies in theology and in the Christian religion. And I'm grateful to you for being a part of this study.